Up next at the Catalyst of Growth Summit is Chief Master Sergeant Joshua T. Lackey, the Command Chief for the Barnes Center for the Enlisted Education at Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama. In this capacity, he advises the commander on operations impacting 400,000 total force of students attending school platforms across our 4 tiers of professional military education at 68 Airman Leadership Schools, 6 non-commissioned officer academies, Senior Non-Commissioned Officer Academy, and Chief Leadership Academy, as well as the 85 campuses for the largest community college in the world. In addition, Chief Lackey has completed multiple joint expeditionary deployments in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Please help me welcome Chief Lackey to the stage.
Appreciate you, brother. Right? It's good. All right, you can kill it. All right, I appreciate the welcome. Thanks for the long kind of intro. And I wasn't sure because I've never done hype music before, so I appreciate that. Appreciate that. So I'm gonna start off with a couple of ground rules. I'm here to talk to you about resilience, right? And I know as soon as they gave my bio, I was like, oh, this is everyone's gonna want to ask me about CCAF. I'll take those spears afterwards. People are going to want to talk to me about all the things that are happening in PME. Again, I'll take those spears afterwards as well. But today I want to talk to you about what I think I've learned on the road to resilience. So there's three particular areas that I'm going to talk to you about. And oh, by the way, before I get started, how great was Miss Britt and her speech, right? And so, yeah. She did amazing. So I get to follow that, and I'm before lunch. And so I'm in this weird space where I'm the guy who is torched CCAF. I'm keeping you from lunch, and I just am following a great speaker. So, ta-da, here I am. So the 3 things that I think I've learned about resilience is about trusting relationships. I'm going to talk to you about grit. Some people call it determination. Some people call it different things, but grit and sense of belonging. And so just to get familiar with, who I am as a person, I don't like giving prescriptive, like, here's 10 easy steps to be a more resilient. That's not me. I can't do that. So I'm going to talk to you guys about my journey, some of the things that I learned along the way. You can pick it up. You can take it. You can leave it. It's up to you, right? Everyone's different journey looks slightly different. Oh, now I've got Miss Britt here to judge she's an educator. I may say and a couple times. I will use my notes to make sure I stay on point. And so what I want to talk to you about first is trust, right? I trust you. So here's the thing. It's like in everyday situations, we trust total strangers. I drove 3 hours here this morning down a road that was 1 lane on either side. And the whole way I was trusting those other drivers that the rules of the road were more important to them than doing whatever they wanted. Because otherwise they would crash into me, they would exceed the lane barriers, all these things. And so I trusted them, right, inherently. We had a shared understanding. This is how we drive down the road. I hope, right? Unless one of them just came from England and all of a sudden we're sketchy about what the rules of the road are or one of those things. So there's other things that I believe to be true about myself is when I go into a relationship, I always believe that their trust is mine to gain, right? I don't expect people to trust me off the bat. I have to give to get. And so when I meet somebody, I trust them inherently. My trust in them is theirs to lose. Their trust in me is mine to gain, right? No expectations. And so in doing that, there's the again, right? In doing that, the thing that I've found helps is consistency and competence, right? If you have someone like he is definitely like good at this thing. And so if you find some consistency, if when a troop or a friend comes to you and they say, hey, I'm struggling with this, and you don't have the time, but you stop and say, people are my priority. Talk to me about that. There's a consistent touch point. If when I come into the office every day, there's the same demeanor. It's not different day to day. It's not, I don't know which Chief Lackey I'm getting today, whether it's the like hype man who comes up to rap music and rock, or whether it's the lows, woe is me, the world is ending. I should present a consistent me to people who engage with me. They deserve that so that they can know, all right, when I talk to him, this is kind of what I can expect. I don't want them guessing. I hope this is, like I'm guessing it, this is my water. I don't want them guessing or worried about what reaction they're going to get. They're trying to transfer information to me. And if I'm not in a mode to receive, then I'm stopping that. And so it's important. The competence. Now, I will leave that to people who have worked with me, how competent I am. I want to believe that I have some degree of competence, but that's a self-assessment. I will say, when I was in Afghanistan, as you kind of heard that I got accused of having a second family there because I've spent 39 months in Afghanistan, and people were like, do you have like a home? Is it like renting it out? I'm like, no. The Air Force just likes me to spend time with the Army playing in the sandbox. So when I was in Afghanistan, when I'm there as the medic on an infantry team, they start calling you Doc, right? It's not Master Sergeant Lackey, Technical Sergeant Lackey, Chief Lackey, whatever. It's hey Doc. And there's trust in that word that they use because they value what I bring to them, and the way that they show that they value is by saying those words. Now, other medics would come on, people that they just met, and they would call them medic, right? Literally the word medic, because they're Army and they identify them by like trades. And so they'd be like, yeah, this medic over here. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you can call him Doc too, man. It's no big deal. But this is how I got it, was with competence. So come to me with a sprained ankle, a small thing. And I do the right protocols for that. You heal, you get better. Come to me with a dislocated shoulder. All right, that was interesting and weird. But, hey, I'll lay you on the stretcher. We're going to make sure that shoulder pops back into place. You're back in the fight 24 hours later. So that by the time that we're out on patrol and we get hit by a catastrophic IED, and I've got somebody that's sitting in front of me that's asking, am I going to be all right? Somebody that I slept 10 feet from for a year. Am I going to be all right, Doc? If I don't have trust with them, when I look them in the eye and say, yeah, I got you, it doesn't mean anything. Man, I really took the mood down. I'm sorry. I'm really good for that. I'll tell you, I've been told by troops and other people, like, hey, man, you get it. So I didn't give names this time. I didn't tell like any details, because usually I'll share like names and tell you background on the people. And they're like, hey, don't do that anymore. We get invested in the characters and they die. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, fair point, right? I don't want to set you up for failure. You get invested in this character plot, and you're like, it's ended, what? And now you're all sad, and I'm like, yeah, I'm reliving the moment. It's not a good space for everybody to be in, and so I want you to trust me as I'm standing on the stage, like the stage on the stage, and yeah, so there's that. And part of that's me and knowing myself, right? So here's the other thing. If you're going to ask people to trust you, if I'm asking you to trust me, well, what is me? I have to know me before I can say trust me, right? I have to know myself. And so it's one of the examples I give is I had this senior, he was amazing, right? No names. Again, he doesn't die, but I don't want you to get invested in his story. Thankfully, he lives. He texted me yesterday. I know he's good to go. I had this senior a couple assignments ago, and he was, in every way, he was smoking it. Personally, professionally, just as a great human being. And he'd been a first sergeant, so he understood emotional intelligence, all these things. He got to this point in his career where he was looking for the next thing, right? We all get to a point where we're like, yeah, I've been doing this for a while. I want to do something different. And he came to me. He's like, hey, I'm thinking about applying for this job. I will be the Transcom, which is a combatant command. I'll be the Transcom senior listed leader, his exec, right? I was like, oh, okay, tell me more about this, right? And he goes, well, I think I'll learn a lot. Okay, tell me more. Well, it popped up in AMS as a job that I'm available to do, and I'm a local move. I know, I understand. You'll learn. It's easy to do. Why you, right? What makes it about why you as a human is the right pick? And he goes, well, I feel like I'm starting to outgrow this other place. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean just jump to the first lily pad that's there, right? Like, let's be deliberate in your development. Like, I'm pretty confident you're going to make chief this go around. It was like 2 months before he actually found out he made it. I'm pretty confident you're going to make chief. And then what? You're going to be an exec to another chief randomly? Like, that doesn't work. Like, only the Chief Master of the Air Force has that. And Transcom's great. It's not SimSAF. And so I counseled him against that. I was like, you need to know yourself. Like, understand what it is you want. Understand who you are, what you like, what things, I have to watch my words because I spent a lot of time around the Army, make you upset. Right? What you look like when you're upset, how you feel, all those things. Those are important. So I'm being very cognizant of my words. So here's the thing. In my journey, in my learning about myself, I learned that there was things that I liked, right? I like spending time around my family. Love it. If I'm looking for energy, it's there. At work, so where's Sergeant Hernandez? Somewhere in here. Sergeant Hernandez pulled me aside over here while I was prepping and asked me a couple of quick questions. And I just want to say, like that, I get energy from that. I get energy from interactions with airmen, with NCOs, with the rest of us, right? And talking to people and understanding what they're looking for and helping them to guide. So that's something that drives me. All right? I know the things that don't drive me. I know that Carolyn Phillips is meticulous about planning details in a way that I never could be, right? I have done 2 event plannings in my career, and they were because someone came to me and said, we have no one else, we need you. And I'm like, all right, I will do this thing that I'm terrible at. I'm telling you, if you want a party planned, don't ask me. Also, I suck at gifts. So this is the thing that I'll do. I will be like, you know what I need to do? I got a good friend, Erin Seeley, and I want to get her a gift, and I'll think about it for a year. Like it'll just be in my mind. Well, maybe this. Oh, she probably already has that. Maybe this. And then the day comes, and I'm like, I got to do something, and I'll grab just whatever. I'm like, here it is, right? And it's trash every time. It's trash. So I know that's a limitation for me, so I outsource. I ask for help. Right? It's not something, I don't need to do all the things. I'm old enough that I've got it, right? There are things that I'm going to learn to do well, and there are things that just is not my bucket, right? And so I got to get good with that. And that means setting boundaries. I heard you talk about it just a little bit when I was coming in the end. I'll tell you, I can't reinforce what she said enough. And I'll give another example because from my own life, right? I'm not going to give an example from somebody else's life. So it's hard in the military, right? It's hard to set boundaries. It's hard to know what you like because you have prescribed authority above you that's saying you will do this and you will like it and you will go and do these things. And you're like, yes. And they're like, I am going to tell you what time you'll show to work, what time you'll leave from work, what time you're going to go to the after dinner party, boom, 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 right? And so for, a quarter century, I put it in those terms because it makes me feel the gravity of the time. For a quarter century, I've had someone who tells me what to wear, when to be there, and how to act. Where's Josh in that? And so I learned to have to start to set boundaries. There's 3 different kinds of boundaries. There's like no boundaries. I'm wide open. You can do whatever. Just throw things on my calendar, and I'll show up and do the thing. There is strong boundaries. These are my left and right limits. These are no's. Semi-permeable boundaries, right? Where things can pass through and they change a little bit over time, right? Maybe a relationship changes some and it becomes more open and you're like, yeah, you have more access to me. Or a relationship changes some and you go, yeah, you have less access to me, right? I had an open boundary that became a strong boundary when I got divorced. What was it, 3 years ago? I was like, yeah. Stop inviting me over to your hotel room. That's not okay. Strong boundary. I didn't allude to anything. This is for the recording in the back. This is, I got a girlfriend and everything, so just leave that boundary tight. And so, there's that. So here's the other thing, and I had to have a troop teach me this one, is I was a first sergeant with the Defenders, and Defenders are, for the civilians in the audience, Defenders are the military police, they're our ground force in the Air Force, right? They're what keeps us safe, because we fight from a base. And so I was a first sergeant for these Defenders, and out in the missile fields of Wyoming, which sounds like the great start to a Western movie. It's not. And so I'm out there in Wyoming, and I'm sitting at my desk, and I would keep my office austere, right? Absolutely blank walls, nothing on the desk. I learned that as an attaché, right? Something on the desk, you leave out classified material. That's an Article 15 immediately, so I just always have had a clean desk since then. Fear is a great motivator. So this airman walks in and he sits down and he's telling me his whole life story. He starts to, kind of cry about, he's having a tough time with his marriage and we're working through some of those things. I'm giving him some advice because at the time I was married. And at the end, he's like, man, I really appreciate your time, sure. This helped a lot. I was like, oh, thanks. I'm glad to help anytime I can. And he starts to turn and walk away. He does one of those numbers where you look back and then you just no, I'm really going to tell you this thing that's on my mind. And he told me this thing that was on his mind. He said, when are you going to be a part of our squadron? I said, what? I'm completely invested. He goes, you have no pictures on the wall. You have nothing that demonstrates who you are. It's this cold office. And I said, I thought I was taking away all of the barriers to us being able to interact. And I just made it dehumanizing. So I had to take that feedback. I think he was a senior airman. And he's doing great things in the Air Force now, but I really appreciate him telling me to my face, hey, you have to feel things, right? In a lot of ways, we go through, or at least let me say I, right? Because I don't know your circumstance, but in a lot of ways, I had gone through life toughing up, right? My counselor told me last week, she was like, yeah, you're very much like the, yeah, I'm fine. Button up the uniform, we're good. All right, let's get after it. That's kind of the persona that I sometimes give off. And she said, you have a lot of depth of feeling. You need to let people see that. And so in trying to be a consistent person, I wasn't consistent with what the emotional response with things would be. In hard situations, I didn't let people see me cry. I just didn't. In those moments, while I could be empathetic, I I didn't demonstrate the motions. And so I learned I have to feel the things, because otherwise, if I'm asking you to trust me and you look at me and you go, I'm feeling terrible, and you look like it's a regular Monday morning to you, like that's a problem. How can I trust you? I can't believe your emotions. You're not reacting in any way to this massive circumstance. I'm not saying carry somebody else's load. I'm saying be a human being, right? Be a human. And so in that, that's kind of how I built trust relationships for myself. I'll be honest, I was thinking about going down this whole trust theory, because I'm a trust researcher. That's my kind of background. And I was like, oh, I'll talk to him about affective versus cognitive trust and natural versus development. No, I don't think that's right for this audience, right? We're talking about resilience and how trust builds resilience. So the next thing that trust does is it works with grit. Absolute grit. There's a grit researcher. Her name's Angela Duckworth, and she wrote a book titled Grit. And kind of gives away the name, right? So she wrote this book, and in the book, which is kind of a seminal document, she said, grit is transferable, and effort impacts ability. There's a lot of times where we talk about, oh, somebody's just so gifted, right? Oh my gosh, if I had their brains, if I had their physique, if I had their whatever, right, I would be successful. She said effort impacts ability. So maybe I didn't grow up with a lot of strength. I could tell you that I think a lot of the strength that I've had over the years, when I sit and honestly look at it, I think a lot of it comes from my grandfather. I'm from East Texas. My grandfather was he was a coal miner. He worked in dynamite. But before that, he was at the 1st Marine Division that landed at Incheon, Korea, and he marched to Chosin Reservoir to save the Army. That was encircled. Whoa. That was like it got a reverb. Now I know if I want reverb, just do this. So, I promise I won't mess with you. So he marched out there, and he didn't tell any stories about it, but I know about what they call the Chosin Few, right? And so it was one of the hardest campaigns in U.S. military history. And when I came back from Jalalabad one time, it's the only time he ever talked about it. He called me up. He said, "Hey, Josh." And he had a thick Southern accent, so it was more like Josh, right? There's always an AW in there somewhere. So he asked me. He said, "How's the hand-to-hand combat?" And I was like, "I don't fight like that." Like, line it up, and I'm like, put the little red dot in the middle, and right? And he was like, "There's something you never forget. It's when you hold the knife and it slips between the ribs." And I was like, "Oh, you had a very different experience than I had that you recall very vividly. And please, I hope you get some healing." So the reason I say my grit, I think a lot of it comes from him, right? Is that the day he died, my grandfather got up. He would go to Catholic Mass, right? He got up, got dressed in his suit, and he was driving to Mass. He said, I don't remember who, he told somebody, "I'm not feeling great today." So what does an old Marine do? He stops off at the gym on the way to, he didn't go to the doctor, he stops at a gym on the way to Mass, and he walks in, and he does squats and bench press for reps, right? To try to just sweat this out. Whatever this is, I got to get this out. Couldn't. So he was like, I'm going to sweat it out. So then he goes and sits in the sauna in his suit, right? Because he's not going to bare himself. And that's where he passed away from a heart attack. He'd been having a heart attack the whole time. And so we always said Grandpa was tough as a coffin nail. I don't know if that resonates for you guys, but that's a country phrase. I've tried to lose my accent, but so hopefully I'm successful. But Yeah, so I think some of it came from him, right? I can't honestly say it all belongs to me. But there's things that I have failed at in life. Absolutely rock hard, slammed and hit my face on the ground, and everybody around is going, ooh, right? That look, and they back away a little bit and give you some space to just like kind of pick up. And so when I was in first grade, I had Miss Armstrong. I don't know what grade you taught me in, but she made an indelible impact on my life for the rest of my life because I would work at writing every day. And you remember the like long lines with the dotted ones in the middle? Yeah, that. So I'm working as hard as I can. I got deep purple bruises, right? And every day Miss Armstrong would come by and she'd like, Josh, your handwriting is no good. You need to do it again. And I would have to do it again. Long past when the rest of the class was having to work on it, I'm still, after school, working on my handwriting. I just couldn't get it. I don't know. So I went home. My parents would work with me for like hours. It seemed like days at a time, but I'm sure it was hours. And I would work on my handwriting. I never got better. My handwriting now, you can look at it. It sucks. I could have spent the rest of my life in first grade. They tried to... They try to hold me back in kindergarten because I couldn't cut a straight line, right? Yeah, it's real. That's real. In fourth grade, now I'm not going to tell you my whole life, but I'll tell you fourth grade, my teacher held me out of recess. Yeah, that's right. That's like the last time you get recess too, fourth grade. I think in fifth grade it's gone. So I was like in my last hope of recess, she held me out. And she said, Josh, you're going to spend this hour learning to write the word and the definition 100 times for the word rambunctious. You are rambunctious. And so then I identified with that term, right? It wasn't until I got into sixth grade and a teacher pulled me aside, pulled my mom aside, and said, I think he's got potential. I think there's something there, right? Maybe the light is on behind this kid's eyes, right? I don't know. Might be flickering, but maybe there's a light. And so she believed in me. And by the time I was in 10th grade, I had graduated at 16, right? And so there was goodness there. I moved out, went to Africa, and that's a whole other story I won't share today. But what's important, though, is I kept failing and trying to find a way. Part of my identity is lifelong learner, right? I crave knowledge. And it really doesn't matter the subject. I'm interested in the things, right? And so I had to hold fast to that identity because when I went to college, I came from a really poor background. I didn't know what FAFSA was, right? Like everybody on the planet knows what FAFSA is. I didn't know. I went to the local college that I knew that I could get into. Now I'm like, I had a 4.0 GPA. I had tons of community service. I could have gone somewhere, right? But I didn't. Yeah? I went to this college, didn't know what FAFSA was, and so I believed that college was like everything else I had seen in life. You must pay for it all up front. Yeah. So I was taking 24 semester hours at a time, not a year, at a semester, and I was working 80 hours a week because I had to support myself and pay the college bill. Not sustainable, right? Not sustainable at all. And so, as you can predict now, I failed out of college. It took me a year and a half. There was a couple of incidents that happened along the way. And at the end of that winter semester, after a year and a half, I left. And I came to join the Air Force because that was a community that I knew. I wanted to be a part of something that was together, that gave me this sense of like, I'm not out there by myself. And I heard people in the Air Force talking about this is family business, brother, sister, right? Hey, sister, what's going on? Hey, brother, what's going on? And I was like, man, I like that. So it was my identity that kept me going. So now I failed out of college. I didn't know what a FAFSA was. And now fast forward, like you read my bio and people are like, oh, he went to University of California. He got a doctorate, whatever. Yeah. But I had to keep going. I had to go 8 schools before I got my CCAF, right? It took me a lot to get there. And the thing that kept me going was I love learning. I might not know how to use the tools, the FAFSA. I don't know how to pick a college and understand the degree programs, whatever, early on. Now I'm better, but I'm better now. Like I was one. This is a good story. Thank you. But the road wasn't easy, right? And so people who met me on the back end, they would say, "You're so smart." I think that was because I wore glasses at the time, and inherently you just think people with glasses are smarter because they do so much more reading, right? And so I'm not calling anybody out in particular. I just saying that, as a blanket statement. Or, whatever. They saw the degrees at the end, and they're like, oh, if you've got these degrees from these universities, you must be smart. No, the same thing happened at those universities. I had to have grit. And so the way I look at grit is this. It's not the tenacity to just hold on to whatever, right? Because if I had been like, yeah, go do this gig, right? You want to do the gig, you have the grit and determination, go do it, right? He'd have done it, and it would have been an awful experience, and he would have walked away from that being like, that was an awful experience. Or I can know my identity, and I can tenaciously hold to that, to who I am. I know that I'm a lifelong learner. All right, that means I need education. And I might fumble around with how to get that, but I need it to be who I am. I have a family. I think family is probably the most important thing that I can have going on in my life. And so I make sure that that's part of everything that I do. And so the last piece that I would talk about, trust, grit in terms of holding on to your identity, and sense of belonging is a quick story about my family. So I got divorced. You guys heard me tell that story. And, I'd been married for 21 years. And so that was a long time, right? And we had been through a lot of traumatic events, which I won't share on the stage because I don't want to become a weeping, bawling mess in front of you. And, that's not good behavior for a speaker. But I'm not going to trauma bomb you. So I have 4 kids that I have that stay with me in my home, right? And in setting up boundaries, in demonstrating trusting behavior by being honest about my feelings, by being transparent about what I'm doing, I put on my calendar, these are the things that I'm doing today. I'm taking Jackson to soccer. I'm taking Kirsten to swimming. I'm taking Jonathan to T-ball, right? It's on there. It tells you the times. Anybody who has access to my calendar sees it. He's got mental health on Mondays and boop, at this time, right? They all know the things. Because I want people to understand when they're asking me to do something in those times, they're asking me to make a choice. And so I'm driving driving both of my boys to swim lessons. This is probably almost 3 years now. 3 years ago, and my calendar was the same. And so I get a phone call. It's at 5, and I pick up the phone, and it's this same senior. It's unfortunate he's in a lot of my stories right now. He really is a good dude. So I pick up the phone, and he's frantic. Chief, I need your help. Oh, I said, okay. I'm taking the boys to swim lessons right now. I'm going to stop what I'm doing, but I need to know, is this important? Oh, it's extremely important. I said, okay, it's extremely important. I said, I want you to know you're on speakerphone, my boys can hear you, so they can understand what it is that is going to take me away from spending time with them. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. I got this master sergeant. He's in my office, and he found out because of some of the things that he has in his mental health profile that he can't be a first sergeant. He's going to need a waiver. I said, okay. Who's the waiver? He goes, well, it's the Transcom sheriff. I was like, I know her well. Okay. Where's the urgency? He's like, well, he's here crying. I'm like, but you're there? He's like, yeah. I'm like, and you can help support him? Yeah. When's his package due? In like 6 weeks. Yeah, not an emergency, my guy. We'll talk about this tomorrow. And why I set boundaries. But sense of belonging, how do you create that, right? That need. We've all been a part of units. When I say the word home, it doesn't resonate the same for everybody, but for most people, there's this warm kind of internal feeling where you're like, yeah, home is where my heart is, right? We make jokes, home's where I lay my head, home's where my hat is, but really, when I say the word home, how do we build that feeling? I think part of it is shared understanding, being transparent, communicating, right? It's having very similar values. It's being able to say, this is why. Being able to be vulnerable, right? In this room, me sharing some of my awkward stories with you. Being able to be vulnerable, because I can't expect you to be vulnerable with me and have this safe space, which is the first step. Can't expect you to have this safe space where you can share what you're truly feeling and thinking if I'm not doing the same. And so the example I'll give as I kind of wrap up here for questions, I think I'm right on target, is this. In my home, I run it no differently than I run a unit. It's the same. And I don't mean in the rigid, authoritarian, like, Dad, regulation 362903 says you will wear this. No. Nope. Nobody, nope. It looks like this. You can ask my 7-year-old these questions and he'll answer them. I say, Jonathan, what's home? Home is a safe place, mentally, physically, emotionally. That's our mission. That's my mission statement for the family. Whatever we're doing, it's physically, mentally, emotionally safe. Home is a safe place. Home is where we come and you don't get picked on. It happens outside. You have to have a castle that you can come back to, rest, re-kit, and refit for going back out into the world. That is home. We have 3 values. And if what someone asks us to do doesn't match these 3 values or it infringes on them, we're not doing it. I don't care how important or how cool it sounds, not doing it. Our values are love, laugh, learn. Because if we love, there's a lot that we can forgive on minor infractions, missteps, misunderstandings. If we laugh, we're having a good time together. Things should be fun. Life is hard enough without making your safe place sucky. And learn, right? I expect them to be grown adults by the time they're 18, capable of cooking, cleaning, doing the dishes, all the things, right? But we're going to do it as an educator instead of an authoritarian. And so in all of those things, we partner together. In all of those things, like when I talked about where I was moving when I retire in 3 months, that was a partnership. It's everything we do is a partnership. And so how I'll close is whether it's through trust, grit, and sense of belonging, how these things all interweave. One of the things that has become super valuable to me through my journey is having multiple identities, and not in the way that you're thinking. It's not personality disorder. This is, I'm a chief, I'm a dad, I'm a brother, I'm a learner, I'm a son. And if I take a hit in one of those areas, I have other identities where I am still able to say, I'm valued, I belong, I'm part of this community. I'm part of this family of people. When I retire, when I'm no longer a chief, when I move away from the Barn Center and people don't want to hurt me for CCAF, I'll still have an identity. And so what I would share with you in closing is the Air Force gives us some of that. In our Airman's Creed, we are wingman, leader, warrior. We are the partner beside you. we are the person who will guide you, and we are the person who will fight for you. That's all I have. Thanks. I appreciate you. It's very kind.
Chief, we only have time for one question. But what are the most important attributes of successful leaders today?
I like it. It's actually kind of embedded in the Catalyst for Growth seminar, and so I think it's flexibility. It's also part of our Air Force, right? We use the phrase flexibility is the key to air power. In your mindset, it's a growth mindset, the willingness to change a course depending on how it impacts who you are as a person. And so the very realistic example I'll make is 2 weeks ago, I was going to retire to Colorado, and that was all set in stone. I had SkillBridge all set up, and then something came up where my girlfriend needed to be in Florida, and so now I'm moving to Florida, right? Yeah, so thanks. Because my identity is part of that family. Like, there's no world where I moved to Colorado and she's away, right? Like, that's crazy. So, yeah, that's the most important thing. Being able to be flexible and have a growth mindset. The end? The end? The end.